Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here. I just realized I don't actually need headphones for this. Hope you're all doing well. As you can see behind me, we have the lovely patch notes for patch 4.2.0. And it is a doozy. It is a very big patch that's got a lot of stuff in it, not just the new units, but a lot of changes to all sorts of different factions. Some, I would say most, are probably going to be a little on the unexpected side. But without further ado, we're just going to jump into it and just work our way through as fast as we can, because this video is going to be long and anything I can do to shorten it is going to be worth doing. So, yada yada, you know, we all know it's adding all the new content. I'm not going to focus on any of this. So you know what you're getting. We've been covering it a lot. You know, we've talked about Shenyang and the Gate Masters, the Moonbirds, Celestial Lions, the Golden Knight, yada 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 yada. Everything's super badass and cool looking. But I, of course, will be covering all of the new units and all of the new content here very shortly. By the time you're seeing this video, hopefully we'll be doing live streams and stuff to check everything out, because there's lots of really cool things that I'll definitely be making some videos to show off some specific goodies. So we're just going to go ahead and hop down to where we have kind of the free LC updates and the actual patch notes. We're going to go from there. So first we have some notes about bloom tweaks, which is basically just that there are certain units on certain maps that have really bad bloom, where everything gets really bright, as you can see here, and they've done some toning to make it a little bit less, you know, like, oh god, to look at. It'll be interesting to see how dramatic this is across all the various factions and stuff, but it is nice. This does look significantly better. For corruption borders, I've seen this has been a pretty popular one that people have asked for, is that they smoothed out the lines between the various forms of corruption. So you can see here in the old version, before 4.2.0, the borders were very boxy. Like, it kind of looked like you were playing almost on a Minecraft map, where the corruption, you have these like really hard edges. They've smoothed a lot of them out to make it look much more natural of like where the border is, instead of it just being these like weird hard edges. Down here, they call out a bunch of mods whose work is basically kind of being getting replaced by official content. That's not to say that these mods are not still usable, but you know, it's really, I think a lot of people, myself included, really appreciate when they shout out modders who have been making content that people really love, that then ends up moving on to become official content. So we have here that Den Baron and Inu had Gate Master mods, Lore of Hags, tons of people getting called out, from Venris to Green Phoenix 23, Zodad, Gun King, Casmo, Calm and Normal Time, Scribe Untitled, the Caterin Sled to Zodad and Dead Baron, the Chagebringer unit to Ramen Fernau, Dan Lingling, Printits Mungo, and the Golden Knight from Orange Juleves and Strato Various. So great job, you guys. I'm really hopefully they enjoy the regular version, but hey, if you ever want to try and see different implementations of these kinds of units or characters, you can always go check out those mods. But those modders probably have a lot more goodies. Some of those are pretty famous mod makers. Various notes about stability and performance, some gameplay stuff. So these are mostly, a lot of these are not like super important stuff, just fixing a couple of various issues that have to do with buildings, especially working on how when you're looking at campaign borders, when you're using like various hotkeys in campaign, how the breakdown will work and what it will look like depending on what you're looking for. Fix some various AI issues. A really big one here is Mother Ostankia. So if you are fighting the Mother Ostankia faction, she was kind of a nightmare to fight prior to this patch, because she would just stack a unholy amount of curses and hexes. So when you would go into battle against her, she would apply a curse and a hex to every single unit on the battlefield, which was insane. So the AI has now been restricted to where it can only stockpile 10 at a time. So worst case scenario, she's going to be able to throw, you know, 10 hexes and curses total around on various units instead of 40 in every fight. So that's really good, and will make her faction significantly less agony to play about. They also fixed an exploit that people were using with Chaos Dwarf stuff, Battle highlights. So this is very, very interesting. Rampage, and probably the most major thing, honestly, in this patch, besides all the new units, is that Rampage has received a complete overhaul. So there's been a very big Rampage rework, where now it's supposed to be much more, shall we say, intuitive how it works, and they actually break down all the stuff of how the new Rampage system works so that we can see how the new system functions. So they talk about how the way it used to work was that if you had the Rampage passive or ability or whatever, that when you got down to 75% health and 40% health, you would be given a Rampage token, which if you fulfilled all of these requirements, then at one of those percentages, or actually both of those percentages, you would Rampage. So you had to have Rampage tokens, which means you needed to have Rampage for some reason. There needed to be a valid, visible enemy within 150 meters for you to run at and go into melee with. You have to take at least one hit, some kind of, little bit of damage. You have to have, like I said, the Rampage token, which you get when you pass 75% or 40%. You cannot be routing, and you have to be able to move. If all of those conditions are met, the unit would then Rampage and run at the nearest enemy unit, and you would lose control of them. So now Rampage has completely changed. So now what happens is if a unit has the Rampage attribute and they start to Rampage or they rage, they will become uncontrollable and attack the nearest enemy unit. However, if there are no enemy units nearby, a rampaging unit will now move randomly around the battlefield. So if you have a unit and there's an enemy like 100, 150 meters off to the side and they rampage, they will start to move toward that nearest enemy. However, if there is no enemy within range, they're just going to wander in place and going random directions, which is going to make Rampage a significantly more debilitating ability, and a much, much, much more powerful debuff to hit enemies with. But it's also going to be a lot more standardized how it works, and you don't have to worry about fulfilling a bunch of conditions. So if they are rampaging, they're uncontrollable. If they're not rampaging, they function as normal. End of story. If they're, they talk about that the running in random directions is a new system, which is better because it allows them to be harder to, hit with like certain, it makes them harder to focus down with range fire and spells and stuff, because in the older stuff, if they somehow started rampaging and there were no enemies nearby, they would just sit in place and not do anything. Now they wander, which means they're also easier to disrupt. So you can rampage an enemy. If you use an ability on an enemy that causes rampage, you can cause them to move in random directions and then take advantage of that to get like a really good flank charge on them, or a rear charge, or lure them into some kind of trap or what have you, which makes inflicting rampage significantly more powerful. So under the new implementation, however, Rampage as an ability is totally gone. It does not exist anymore. Instead, there is two new abilities that inflict Rampage, which are new. So the first is Feral Rage, and we'll talk about the second one later. So Feral Rage, as you can see here, is now for your feral monsters, and they give a complete list of everything that has the Feral Rage rule. And Feral Rage, as you can see, no longer is 75% and 40% health. Now it is 75% health and then 25% health, which means you're far more less likely for your rampages to overlap and for you to just have like infinite rampage until they die. Granted, it is a pretty long duration. 40 seconds is, nothing to sneeze at. But having it at 25% instead of 40% makes it much more likely that you're going to be able to seize control again of your units, and that by the time they're doing their second rampage, they're probably pretty close to routing anyway. One of the things they talk about here, so here's the full list of units that have this new Feral Rampage ability. So it's the Feral Manticore from the non-Chaos factions. You have the Chaos Feral Manticore from the appropriate Chaos factions. The Feral Dreadsaurian, the Feral Hydra, which the Feral Hydra is only the green skin one. if I recall correctly. The War Hydra, which the regular Dark Elves have, does not suffer from Feral Rampage. You have the Feral Wyvern, the Feral Manticore, which is apparently different from the first Feral Manticore, the Feral Troglodyte, the ROR version, the Feral Cold Ones, Feral Bastiladon, Feral Carnosaur, the Blessed Carnosaur because it doesn't have any kind of rider, the Feral Stegodon, the Feral Mammoth, the Saber-Tusk Pack, the Razor Gourd Herd, the Squig Herd, and the Feral Mammoth. So in the grand scheme of the game, there's actually very, very, very few units that suffer from the new Feral Rampage. But it is something that you will want to deeply consider when, looking at these units and how you want to utilize and control them. And then they talk about that for units that used to have Rampage inflicting abilities, those have been completely redone. Many of them have either just been flat out removed in the sense that they do something different now, or they last for significantly less time, or they're more difficult to use and stuff like that. So like a good example that they talk about is that Witch Elves no longer deal Rampage on impact. Now they just do poison, and they have the Witch Brew ability now. So all Witch Elf units have a once per battle ability they can use. So it's an active ability. You, the player, have to deliberately trigger it. And when you trigger it, they get the Witch Brew passive that allows them to inflict Rampage with their melee attacks. But it's a one and done ability. So your Witch Elves are not able to consistently inflict Rampage type stuff. Then, very exciting for me, is the Stealth Lizardmen update. So it says, with changes to Rampage, we've also taken the opportunity to stealthily update the Lizardmen battle slightly with some thematic new abilities that were in the original army books, but missing from the game. Special shout out to Loremaster Sotek. Yeah, another W for the Sotek. There's a lot of changes I have had the opportunity to help push forward to get into the game. I've been very proud of a lot of them. I would say most of them probably revolve around like Lizardman stuff, but there's actually quite a few things we'll look at either in this patch or, in things that have come up in the past where I've been able to try and get in abilities from the tabletop game or find, fun ways to make things more accurate to how you would imagine they would work. But this one in particular, I'm really, really proud of. I have been begging for Spawnkin for years. So I'm glad that they finally got this done, mostly to shut me up, I think. But I'm very, very excited for Spawnkin because it's going to make taking thematic armies of Kroxigors and Skanks so much stronger. So what does Spawnkin do? Well, Spawnkin is very similar to like how Bretonnia has the Peasant and Knight abilities, or Chaos Dwarfs have like the Chaos Dwarf and Hobgoblin abilities, where they when they're in close proximity to one another, they cause buffs. So if a skink unit with the Spawnkin rule is nearby a Kroxigor unit, the skinks get the cause fear. This is amazing because it means not only do the skinks cause fear, just like the Kroxigors do, so they deal a leadership debuff. Much more importantly, though, it makes the skinks immune to fear. So now skinks get to completely ignore the fear debuff, which means your skinks are not going to be taking a pretty substantial cut to their already not super great leadership. And then for the Kroxigors, if they're near the skinks, they get a small buff to their weapon strength, which is kick-ass. So your Kroxigors will fight harder and deal more damage if they are near skink units. And then they talk about that the skink units that are being affected are the regular skink cohort, skink skirmishers, red-crested skinks, chameleon stalkers, regiment of renowned skink units, and blessed skink units. And then for the Kroxigors, your Kroxigors, sacred Kroxigors, regiment of renowned Kroxigors, and blessed Kroxigors are all considered Kroxigor units. Now, they do talk about down here that they thought about adding this ability to characters, but they decided not to because when you're looking at skink characters, they have all these different mounts. So it'd be like, okay, does it still count as a skink if it's a skink on a pteranodon, or a skink on a stegodon, or a skink on a ripperdactyl? So I understand why they didn't put it on the skink characters, but as of right now, I don't believe it's on any of the characters. I do personally think they should add it to the Kroxigor characters, because a Kroxigor character is always a Kroxigor, right? It's always a Kroxigor on foot. Kroxigors don't have any mounts. So I think for them, it's reasonable for them to have the ability, especially because that extra little bit of weapon strength is really, really helpful for the Kroxigor Ancient and Nakai. So I will say that I hope that in the future, we can get it applied to the Kroxigor characters as well, and not just the regular Kroxigors, but I totally get why they didn't put it on the skink characters. And frankly, the skink characters don't really need it. You know, like fear isn't usually a huge problem for them, especially because the vast majority of them, the second you put them on any kind of mount, they cause fear almost immediately. So, you know, for the skink characters, spawn kin I don't think is really that important, so I don't care if they don't have it. But I would really like to see it on the Kroxigor characters, because I think the reasoning for like, oh, we don't want to put it on the skinks because what is a skink once you start adding in dinosaurs, I think that's a completely reasonable note. Because I would not consider, because like, you know, when you're looking from like a tabletop perspective, your stegodons and your bastillodons should not have the spawnkin synergy because they're too busy worrying about their big dinosaurs and not running around with their Kroxigor buddies. Then we have a note on Predatory Fighter. So Predatory Fighter is a new ability. So this is a brand new ability. So you still have your Predatory Instincts, which Predatory Instincts is the ability that a lot of your units have, where if once they take a certain amount of damage, they get like a little buff. But now you have Predatory Fighter. So Predatory Fighter is that if a unit has this ability, which is mostly Saurus stuff, Saurus and Kroxigors, then your guys basically be like when they have to chase down an enemy unit, which is awesome because that's just a cool ability. So what it does is it's kind of like the reverse of the Skaven scurry away ability, where when an enemy unit that you have to have been in combat with it, if you've been in close combat with an enemy unit and they start to flee, like they rout, then these units will get a small melee attack and speed buff so that they are better enabled to chase down that unit and just like beat the shit out of them, which is awesome. It's a super thematic ability and it's extremely powerful. You know, it's great for Saurus, who are already a really slow unit, but it's amazing on all of your like Cold One Riders and your Kroxigors, who are, you know, relatively speedy. So it really benefits them to get in on those big charges where they can break the enemy unit, cause them to rout, and then they're able to just run them down, which is super duper sexy. And you can see here the list is all of the Saurus characters, Nakai, the Saurus and Kroxigor basic characters, the Skink Oracle, all of your Saurus units, your Feral Cold Ones, Cold One Riders, Kroxigors, Hornworm Riders, the Carnosaur, the Troglodon, the Dread Saurian, and then all of the Regiment of Renown Blessed variants, which is great. Another new rule, Temple. Oh yeah, Sacred Duty and Eternal Duty. Oh god, these are so sexy. So Temple Guard now gain the cause fear and immune to psychology attributes when standing next to a hero for Sacred Duty, which is fucking fantastic. So that means not only will the Temple Guard cause fear, so that they'll be dealing a leadership penalty to nearby enemies that don't also cause fear or whatever, but they're immune to psychology, which means that as long as your Temple Guard are protecting a character, they cannot be terrified. So the Temple Guard are gonna like put those shields up, keep those halberds up, and they're gonna fight to the bitter fucking end, as long as they're nearby a character, which is so good. And then if you have the Star Chamber Guardian Regiment of Renown, they have an upgraded version, which is called Eternal Duty, which allows them to also cause fear, but they become unbreakable. So they will literally fight to the bitter end to protect your characters, which I just, I love it. I love it so much. And then Solar Engines, yay! Solar Engines have their passive ability. Any Lizardman unit positioned near a solar engine will now regain vigor from its warm, invigorating rays. That's absolutely fantastic. Because in the tabletop game, Solar Engines had a passive ability where they invigorated your units by giving them +1 initiative, because like all the, you know, the heat from like the solar energy would get all the Lizardmen's cold blood up and running. So now it gives you a vigor regeneration, which is really, really powerful. That's excellent for the solar engine because it just allows it to kind of sit behind your units as it's firing laser beams while it's also providing passive support, which is extremely exciting. God, there's so many just like nice little fun changes. Elementals! Oh, please let this be please, Araby. Please give me Araby with just all the elementals. But the fact that elementals becoming an attribute is like, mwah! Oh my god. The elemental attribute works very much like the existing demonic and undead attributes. Elemental units cannot be routed, but take damage when their leadership is broken. Elementals also have bonus physical resistance as well as immune to fear and terror. The following units that are in the game are considered to be elementals. The Incarnate Elemental of Beasts, the Elemental Bear, and the Onyx Crowmen. Yes! So the Onyx Crowmen are no longer, they're what they're supposed to be. They are elementals of yen. They shouldn't be fleeing from combat. They don't have concepts of mortality. They don't give a damn. So this is absolutely fantastic. I think Onyx Crowmen are also going to benefit very, very heavily from, if it's like demonic, it's probably going to be like a 20% physical resistance, which is going to be pretty substantial for the Onyx Crowmen. And you know, for your big elements as well, like, you know, they certainly will benefit from the extra tankiness. But it means, you know, you have to be a little more careful about throwing them into just desperate situations. And then the construct keyword, which is not a new attribute, but I'm guessing, yeah, they're applying it to new units. The eagle-eyed among you may notice that this attribute is not new, as it originally arrived with the release of the Rise of the Tomb Kings. Much like the undead, demonic, and elemental attributes, this attribute prevents the unit is applied from being routed, but damage is applied when leadership is broken. We have now applied the construct attribute to several of the units that fit the criteria of being a construct. So these is now applied to the Terracotta Sentinels, Jade Lions, Jet Lions, Rogue Idols, and Satang the Watcher. Excellent. This is great. I love this. It makes these units... There are universal kind of like laws that should be applied across the board to all of the units in the game. And these are the kinds of rules I really, really like to see, because they make the universe feel more cohesive. And they also make these units a lot more, in my opinion, reasonable. I personally love this a lot. It makes these units make a lot more sense. I will say that Cathay is getting a lot of constructs now, which makes me really, really hope we get some kind of like Master Artificer type generic character one day in the future, maybe with Yin Yin or Li Dao or whatever, because it would be very, very nice to get a character who can repair your constructs, you know, heal them in some way. Granted, you know, Cathay does have access to the lore of life through Miao Ying, but I still would love to see kind of a dedicated character who's all about kind of healing and buffing your constructs. But I think this is excellent. The Rogue Idol being considered a construct, I think, makes a ton of sense, because it's, you know, literally a construct of rocks that's held together by Wah energy. And really and truly, if, you know, it starts losing in battle, and the greenskins around it begin to like flee and run away, and that Wah energy starts to dissipate and collapse, the construct itself should also fall apart. So that, I think, makes a lot of sense. Glorious Charge. This attribute originally comes from the Kislev Army Book, being a unique trait of Winged Lancers in the Griffin Legion. When charging into an enemy unit, charge bonus duration is doubled. Oh my. And the enemy unit takes a leadership penalty as if they had been attacked in the flank. Oh, that's so good. Oh, that is so good. So their charge bonus lasts for twice as long as it normally does. And even if the enemy takes a front charge, they count as if they were charged in the flank. That is beautiful. And it's on the Winged Lancers, the Griffin Legion, Boris Ursus, and the Golden Knight if they're on horses, and Cetra on his Chariot of the Gods. That is fucking awesome. Okay, so that means the Chariot of the Gods got a big boy buff. That is a very, very big boy buff. Is it going to be enough to make the Chariot better than the War Sphinx? Probably not, but you know what? I'll take it. And then, I will say, I love this for the Winged Lancers and the Griffin Legion, because it helps add to make them unique, right? To make it where there's something unique you're getting, instead of it just being like, oh, if I want to be really, really fast, cheap infantry, I take my Kosovoite dervishes. But if I want, like, if I'm going to invest in cavalry, I might as well just always take bear cavalry. Well, now it's like, okay, no, if you want to focus on like really hard-hitting charges that are able to really maximize that charge bonus and really get some heavy leadership penalties, even when you're just doing a direct frontal charge, now Winged Lancers and Griffin Legion have a unique point in your roster and are a much more useful unit, instead of just merely being, you know, like a step on the ladder to getting your warbears. So I love that. I'm also really curious how that's going to affect Cetra, especially in campaign. Immune to flanking. Ooh, units with this attribute take no penalties when flanked. Simple. The following units are now immune to flanking. Bastiladons. Kick ass. Nice. So now it does not matter which direction your Bastiladon is being attacked from. He does not give a shit, which is exactly how they worked in tabletop. I'm curious if they'll apply this to more units. If I recall correctly, I think because they made Slime Trail do something different in Total War. I can't remember what Slime Trail does off the top of my head. But the Slime Trail effect in tabletop was that you just didn't have a flank or rear. But I believe in this game they changed it to like if you're in combat with a unit that has Slime Trail, like you take penalties to melee attack or some other stuff. So I don't think they necessarily need to change Slime Trail to immune to flanking. I think it's kind of fine. But this could be a cool ability to see be given to things like Beasts of Nurgle. Revealed. Units with this attribute are permanently visible to the enemy, regardless of line of sight. The Hide Forest, Stalk, and Unspottable attributes are also negated by this attribute. The Revealed attribute is generally used offensively to reveal enemy units within an area. That is kick-ass. The ability to forcefully reveal all enemies within a certain radius, regardless of if you can see them. So, like, you don't need line of sight. It doesn't matter what abilities they have. If they're hiding in terrain, no, bitch, I can see you. I think this will be extremely good on, like, if we ever get Chawcox, the Eternity Warden, who is the Lizardmen Temple Guard special character, this is an ability he should have, because his big helmet, that's like the really big powerful gimmick that it gives him, is the helmet allows him to, like, see everything within a pretty absurd distance. So I would love to see this on Chawcox. Silenced. Units with the Silenced attribute are unable to use active abilities or cast spells. Oh, this attribute is generally used offensively to hunt down spellcasters. Oh, baby. So that's probably a new contact effect, but it might also be on like some spells or abilities and stuff. Oh my, that is sexy. I love that. That's so nice, because like that's kind of always what I thought that like dispelling should be. Like, dispelling is not a concept that exists in Total War Warhammer, but I always felt it could exist, that wizards should just, like, to represent a dispel, wizards should have, like, a once per battle, or if they're, like, a particularly good wizard, maybe, like, twice per battle, or, like, it has, like, a really long cooldown or something, but have an ability to represent dispelling, where they're able to target, only enemy casters, and when they hit them, they force all of their, they make it where they can't use any spells for, like, 30 seconds, right? Like, I always felt that would be a very easy way to implement dispelling into the game. I know I had some discussions with some CA devs about it like years ago that never went anywhere, but it's like, do I need it? No, but I do think that'd be a cool way to represent it. But I'm very interested for the Silence attribute. I'm very, very curious what all units would get that. So, I'm excited to see it. Mount scale fix. All right, so they've made a lot of the characters more appropriately sized on their mount. So Karl Franz is no longer bigger than his mount. Okay, that's good. So, a lot of characters have been appropriately rescaled. That's very, very nice. I hear about that pretty frequently. Races and balance. They fixed spotting range for a lot of units. Cool. Fixed a number of technologies that modified diplomatic relations with all factions except the Chaos Dwarfs. Well, that's good. The Pillar of Bone no longer can be used by Ogre Kingdoms, Wood Elves, and Norska because they cannot get up to tier 4. I will say, I don't mind that. I do wish that they would just make a lesser version for them, because it's an Arcane Fulcrum. And the thing about Arcane Fulcrums is everybody should be able to use an Arcane Fulcrum. Every single faction in the game. That was the whole point of Arcane Fulcrums, is everybody could use them. Even the dwarfs could use them. So I don't know if I really want it removed. I would just rather that they make like a tier 1 or tier 3 or whatever version for these factions specifically, that, obviously it should be less powerful because they can't get to a really high tier, but I think they should still have access to it. Fix an issue where some Beastmen, Warriors of Chaos Rebels would suffer from terrain attrition they should be immune to. Okay, that's a good fix. Fix an issue where occupying a settlement would not apply the conquest penalty. Cool. Icon of Sorcery, okay, whatever. All right, spells fixed in general. Fix the Lore of the Wild spells Viletide and Traitorkin having the wrong cooldown reductions. Ooh, okay. All right, Beastmen stuff. All right, let's get into factions. Beastmen fixed an issue where Beastmen Hearthstone effects were not being cleared when the Hearthstone settlement is occupied by another faction. Well, that is important. Fixed an issue where Beastmen buildings were increasing rate of tower fire for the player rather than decreasing the rate of fire for the enemy. That is funny. They're supposed to be slowing down. They're just firing faster. Fix the Wargors, replenish troop not working. Okay, that's obviously very good. Zongors. Let's see. Zongors were previously a bit confused on if they were marked Gors or marked Bestigors. They came to the negotiation table where they've collectively agreed that they are instead marked Gors. All right, so they're not meant to be a super elite unit. They're not a high tier unit. They're a mid tier unit. So we have Zongors. They're now cheaper. They have okay. So they have more guys in a unit. So instead of 100 guys per unit, they have 120 guys per unit. They have less barrier health though. They have less overall hit points per model, less leadership, significantly less melee attack. That is 11 less melee attack. Oh my god. But they did get 8 more melee defense, so that's cool. They got significantly reduced armor, going down to 50. However, they run faster, they charge faster, and they don't weigh as much. I will say, I don't know. I'm kind of, I'm really split on that. Like, I think that helps them have a better role overall. I think I kind of preferred them being Bestigor tier, especially with their ability, right? Because Arcane Surge or Arcane Charge, whatever it is, because the whole point of their ability is that they deal more damage the more magic comes in. So the fact that their melee attack is going all the way down to 24, I feel like that kind of makes their gimmick, being that they get stronger as more magic is cast, to be a lot like, wow, that's like a lot shittier now. Because it's no longer like it just doesn't synergize as well. Like, it doesn't really matter how much damage you do if you only have 24 melee attack, because you're not going to be hitting much. Granted, there's like so many of them now and they're cheaper, so like I don't hate it. And I did always feel that the marked Gors were not really supposed to be like Bestigor level. They always seemed like they were kind of supposed to be that middle ground between Bestigors and regular Gors. I think personally I kind of preferred them more on the Bestigor side of the spectrum, but I don't hate this. Granted, I still need to play with them and see kind of how they feel and stuff. It definitely seems like they're more designed now to be frontliners who are more supposed to hold the line, which I don't know. I just for me personally, I just feel like this causes some annoyances with their Arcane Surge ability. But that's just my opinion. I don't think my opinion is right. It's just my opinion. Incarnate Elemental Beast is now more expensive. It's no longer unbreakable. It also no longer has Woodsman, but it does have Strider, so it has better than Woodsman now. It only has 70 leadership. However, it has 20% spell resistance, 10 bonus versus large, 10 bonus versus infantry, no longer has any bonus large. Oh, but they got their Howl of the Great Beast. That's cool. Okay, so that's something I've been pushing for. Is so in the tabletop game from the Forge World book, they had an ability called Howl of the Great Beast where they did like a big leadership penalty because they would like roar. So the fact that they have that now, very cool. I'm excited to see that. But yeah, so they're no longer unbreakable, which just means you just need to actually support them. You can't just throw them into battle and hope they'll fight till they die, because they're still functionally, they don't run. It's just that they take more damage if you let them just get overwhelmed, which I think is totally fine. But Strider is nice. Strider is definitely an upgrade over Woodsman. So yeah, cool. And actually that's interesting too, because since they have the elemental ability, that means they're going to have a lot of physical resistance. So for them to have spell damage resistance and physical resistance means that the only thing that's going to be able to cut through their saves effectively is going to be magic damage. So like weapons that have the magic damage attribute. Let's see. Malagor will no longer forget he has wings by climbing ladders. Okay, good. That's definitely important. Fixed an issue where some Tarok specific effects were not applying to the new units. Cool. Fix the Beastman skill Beastlord spot not applying all of its effects to Cygors. Okay. Morgar got a bug fix. Cool. Bretonia. Fix special settlements of Castle Drakenhof, Maragliano, and Corone not providing Bretonnian factions with the correct amount of growth. Oh, well, that is important. The Green Knight now has more physical damage resistance. Very cool. Bretonnia Prophetess Lords now correctly gained their Barded Warhorse mounts at rank 5. Nice. Fixed a tech problem. Chaos Dwarves fixed an issue with one of the traits they had. Dark Elves just got a bunch of price alterations. They seem to be mostly reductions, so masters are cheaper. Here we see Wood Elves no longer have Madness of Cain as a passive contact effect. Instead, they now have Poison, but they gained Witch Brew as a single-use active ability. Hargoneth Executioners are immune to Psychology. Ooh, that's very nice. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So that means your Hargoneth Executioners are going to be they're not going to care about Fear and Terror anymore, which is excellent news. It's going to make them, much more stable and reliable troops. Let's see. Then we have Pit of Shades fix. Okay. The Ancestor Dwarf Spirits now only have a 55% physical resistance instead of 75. Okay, I think that standardizes them a little bit better with like ethereal characters. Grand Cathay Technology Tree Rebalance. Again, 2 Electric Boogaloo. So let's see. The tech tree for Grand Cathay has had another pass. Generally, push has been made to remove underwhelming or filler effects that were nice to have but didn't really do much. Plus, we aim to increase the useful effects granted by certain technologies to make them feel like viable choices. We don't cover them all here, so you have to get in the game to see what they all are. But a couple examples they give. Administrative Studies used to give 5% upkeep reduction for peasants. Woo! But now it gives 20% off recruitment costs for peasants. Yeah, I think that's fine. That makes it where you can like recruit a massive peasant army for free, pretty much, instead of having to rely on... Yeah, 5% upkeep on peasants is like, what? It'll save you like 1 gold. Let's see. Dragon Emperor's Blessing no longer gives you upkeep reduction, which was only 5%, which granted is not a lot. However, it does give you plus 10 to your Lord and Hero recruit ranks. Damn. All right, that is substantial. I will definitely take that. Yeah, that's a lot of bonus ranks. Grace of Shenyang now gives plus 50% experience for all characters once you upgrade it. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so that's a big old chunk of bonus experience. Inner Speed. Inner Speed used to only give 5% speed to Yang units, I believe. Now it gives 20% speed bonus. That is pretty hefty. Yuan Bo now begins his campaign with the Gatemaster. Yeah, that's a nice change. That's good. I think along with many people, probably felt that him starting with a alchemist was really weird because like Yuan Bo, he would hate alchemists. Like if you're playing as a Yuan Bo campaign, obviously it is a sandbox game, so you can do whatever you want, but that just didn't vibe with him at all. That is not something he would do. So a Gatemaster is a much more reasonable pick for him. We also see that he's received some stat changes. It looks like he's more aggressive overall now. He has much higher melee attack. His melee defense, though, went down a fair bit. He has a higher charge bonus, more armor, more damage of both kinds, but he no longer has Executioner as a base ability. Instead, Executioner is now present on the ability granted by the Dragon's Fang. However, it's also as part of his skill tree attached to the Executioner kill. Okay, so if you're playing in multiplayer, if I'm reading this correctly, that means that if you're playing in multiplayer or skirmish battles, for Yuan Bo to have the Executioner ability, you have to take the Dragon's Fang. So you have to pay for it. Whereas it seems to be saying that if you're playing campaign, you automatically get it on your skill tree. It just gets buffed further on your skill tree as well as from the Dragon's Fang, but you will have it still like right away from the campaign. His Dragon form receives similar buffs where he's more offensive, less defensive. Celestial General is substantially more expensive now. Base. He also has less health, but he has more leadership, pretty hefty more armor, and deals substantially more damage. 10 more base damage and 30 more armor piercing damage. So he's much more elite. Warhorse, very similar, where he's more powerful, but he also costs more and has a little bit less health. On the Jade Longma, same thing, less health, but otherwise more powerful and more expensive. Lord Magistrate is cheaper on all versions. The Grace of Kuei Yin Celestial Dragon crossbows now have flaming attacks. Nice. Oh yes, Onyx Crowmen are no longer a Yang unit. Thank you. That was so dumb. I hated that. I hated them having Yang because it just didn't make, like, they're literally made of yin. They cannot be any more yin. That also means that they're going to synergize so much nicer with synergize so much nicer with your Jade Longma riders and your new Celestial Lions. So that's really, really awesome. Thank you. All right, so they have the elemental attribute now. They count as yin units. They cost more money and more upkeep. They have a little less leadership, but they're also, you know, they can't flee from combat. They just fight till they die. They have a little less melee attack to make them a little less crazy, but they now have magical attacks, and they also have 20% physical resistance. So overall, some pretty substantial buffs. They're going to be useful in a lot more scenarios. And you also don't have to worry about them breaking and running from combat. You actually need to pay attention to them because otherwise they'll crumble. I like that a lot. I think that's a great change. Same thing for the Empress's Crowmen. Let's see. Jade Lion no longer has immune to psychology, which it does not need because it's a construct, so it's, you know, it doesn't care. Oh, it has mastery of the elemental winds now. Ooh, okay, that's really strong. So by having a Jade Lion on the battlefield, that means all of your spells are going to be more effective. All your spells are going to be more powerful. It is substantially more expensive upkeep-wise. That is a huge increase in upkeep cost. But it has a lot more health, a little less leadership, a little less charge bonus. It no longer has physical damage resistance. However, it does now have missile damage resistance, which, you know, that's fine. So it has now 15% missile damage instead of 20% physical. It now has magical attacks, but it no longer gives flammable. I think that's pretty reasonable. Giving flammable was a okay gimmick, but you had to build around it. It wasn't good in the vast majority of situations. Like, you very specifically had to build around it. And that's also kind of a powerful ability on a generic unit that, like, it just didn't really make a lot of sense. I think the idea that it has mastery of the elemental winds and magic attacks makes a lot more sense. And that also means that it's still extremely effective, but it's more about what it adds to your army, being that it's making your wizards more powerful, and it's also specifically geared at tackling enemy units that have physical resistance instead of just randomly, like, making people more likely to light on fire. Jet Lions are no longer immune to psych because they're constructs. They're also substantially more expensive, got the same changes. They now have 50 spell damage resistance. Okay, do not cast spells on these because it will not do jack shit. So they have 50% spell resistance, and I believe they have an aura that gives spell resistance. They also, their missile damage resistance got reduced a bit, but they have Disrupted now, which inflicts silenced on enemy units. Good change. Jet Lions are now actually worth taking, I think. So this means if you take a Jet Lion unit and it hits any kind of unit or character, it makes all of their active abilities and their spells basically forces them on cooldown. So it makes them unable to use their active abilities or spells. So the Jet Lion is now an amazing, amazing monster for hunting down wizards, hunting down, like, units or characters that rely on enacting special abilities. For instance, if you see your opponent, let's say your opponent is Skaven and he's got a unit of warp grinders, you just throw this Jet Lion right at them. They can't do shit. They don't get to do any of their little, like, drill into the ground damage abilities. If you throw it at a unit of war dancers, they're not going to be able to activate their stances unless they've already done so. But you throw it at a wizard, no more spells. So this is going to be a very, very powerful unit if you know how to use it correctly. Terracotta Sentinels are no longer unbreakable because they're constructs now. However, they have gained 15% missile resistance. Nice. And a little bit less leadership, which is standard. The Zengu War Drum now has Encourage, but no longer has Spell Mastery. Okay, I think that... Okay, so it's much more of a buff wagon for your troops instead of being like oh, look how much more powerful your wizards are. So the harmony amplification is now 50%, which is quite large. That's what most lords give. So it's much better as a harmony amplifier, and it has the encourage aura. So it's basically a character, which makes sense for what it is. Because I think I was not alone being like, I really, really wanted the Lord Magistrate to ride on one because it seemed like the perfect thing for him. Like, oh, a character should be able to ride that. But this functionally makes it into a character. So it has encourage, which characters do. And it also increases your harmony by 50%, which is what most of your lords do. So now it is actually on par with your characters, which means you do not need to add a character onto it. The Disdain of the Dragon Emperor ability, which used to add, I think, just melee attack, now also causes a plus 10 reload skill buff. That's fantastic. So that means that you have an offensive ability that's good for everybody and a defensive ability that's good for everyone. Because the defensive ability for the Zengu War Drum is an armor bonus for everyone within range. And now this means the offensive ability is going to be, I think it's melee attack and reload skill. So that's excellent. That's absolutely fantastic. And then the Regiment of Renown version, its unique one, which is the Fury of the Falling Blade, no longer gives you a speed buff, but instead allows your army to cause fear. That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic, because the speed buff is stupid. I'm going to be honest. Speed buff is really dumb, because the Zengu War Drum is just way too slow to keep up with like your cavalry units. And those are the only things that are really going to benefit from a big speed bonus, because the whole point of Cathay is that they're a defensive faction. Your infantry, like Cathay does not have any great weapon infantry, right? All of their infantry is like halberds and shields, and that's it. And like ranged weapons. Like they are a very, very defensive faction. They want their opponent to come to them. Unless you're like dealing with really specific like cavalry units or certain kinds of constructs. But the War Drum should be more about buffing your infantry squads and, you know, benefiting you from staying in particular formations. It should not be about like trying to rush forward. So I think this makes so much more sense, because by giving all of your units the ability to cause fear, A, that means you're causing fear. So if your enemy doesn't, you're now applying a leadership debuff. And B, it means all of your units are now immune to fear because they cause fear. That's excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Fix the Lord Magistrate's various abilities that had a bug. Fix some other bugs. Cool. Greenskins. Azhag the Slaughterer's unique mount Skull Muncha now displays the correct bespoke armor pieces with some fixed LOD issues and reprocessed textures to boot. So, okay, this is actually a lot funnier than y'all may realize. So for those out of the loop, there has been a whole ordeal with Azhag. So I actually noticed this myself back, oh God, I want to say it was probably like 2 or 3 months after Total War Warhammer 3 came out, that Azhag wasn't actually riding Skull Muncha. There was some kind of weird bug where the original Skull Muncha model had somehow not made it into Warhammer 3. Sorry, not 2 or 3 months after Warhammer 3 came out. 2 or 3 months after Immortal Empires came out. And what it was is that he was riding a regular wyvern. So he wasn't riding his wyvern, because Skull Muncha has like a unique armor piece on her head and also on her chest, or on her belly. It's one of those two. And as I was just riding like a basic bitch one, I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, that's dumb. And so like I kept pushing for them to fix it, and eventually kind of fell off and just couldn't, you know, they just weren't getting around to it. But eventually, actually, I think like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, someone on Reddit made a post about it. And it turned into a whole thing, because like someone on Reddit had posted about it. And then I think it got to the point where someone asked about it on the Total War forums, and a developer or someone at CA responded to the message saying they couldn't fix Skull Muncha because the actual Skull Muncha model was like lost. Like just something happened where it just wasn't in Warhammer 3 at all, and they didn't know where it was. So they were like it's going to be a huge pain in the ass to get into the game. But then, of course, it went to the next level, because then a modder immediately turned around and put the Skull Muncha model in the game, which, you know, made the CA response look like a bunch of jackasses. So I am very pleased to see that after the saga that has gone on, they have now appropriately fixed Skull Muncha. So I think, I did actually check and have seen this, that Skull Muncha is now fixed. Like, Aztec the Slaughterer is now proper, which is wonderful. Here we see Rogue Idols are now much, much cheaper, which is excellent because they're no longer unbreakable, so that makes sense. They fixed a bunch of issues with Regiments Round. Also, there's a dwarf unit here that is not in the dwarf section that goes in the book. So the Grumbling Guard, who are going to grumble about being in the greenskin section of all places, have been fixed from a bug. High Elves, the Sun Dragon Mage mount now has much more missile resistance. Good. A lot of units, and the Noble on a lot of things is cheaper. Creative Assembly. I need to make a separate video about this, but Creative Assembly, please, for the love of God, please, 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 give my heroes the ability to ride low-tier monstrous mounts. Please. Let High Elf Nobles ride on Griffins, and let Dark Elf Masters ride on Manticores. Please. You let Exalted Heroes of Chaos ride on Manticores, if memory serves. You let Scar Veterans ride on Carnosaurs. Come on! They could do it in tabletop, and it makes those mounts, like, make so much more sense within their campaigns. Please, please. Dark Elf Master should be allowed to ride a Manticore. High Elf Noble should be allowed to ride a goddamn Griffin. They are not high-tier mounts. I think that's completely reasonable. Come on, guys, get on it. Corn, fixed a corn bug. Good. Kislev, a lot of little random changes. So for Katerin, she now has the Guardian Call ability, which allows her to summon snow leopards, but she no longer has Ice Shard as a regular skill. The Ice Witch of Ice no longer has Glacial Blast, but instead has Ice Shard. I want to say that this means that the Tempest Ice Witch has Glacial Blast, which is an ability you target on the ground, and it causes like a big, it like causes a bunch of ice to come up and explode on that. I think centered on the wizard themselves. Ice Shard is the one where you like pick an enemy unit that's in front of you, and they like throw a bunch of ice shards at them, and it's kind of like a magic missile. I could be wrong, but I think this means that the ice wizards have Ice Shard and the Tempest wizards have Glacial Blast. I think, but don't quote me on that. Hag Witches got a pretty hefty debuff of significantly less health, also significantly less ammo. Mother Ostankia is now cheaper in multiplayer, but she also has significantly less health, 2,000 less health, a decent reduction on ammo, and she no longer has a ward save, which I think is perfectly reasonable because, to my understanding, Mother Ostankia has been curb stomping the multiplayer meta. I watched a Turin tournament like just the other day, and like she was banned. So clearly she was a little overtuned. So hopefully with over a third of her health knocked out, or no, just shy of a third of her health knocked out, less ammo and no ward save, hopefully she will actually be beatable. The Akshina Ambushers no longer have splash attacks. Their calibration distance is no longer as good. So that means they're not going to be nearly as snipey at long range. Same thing for the Wolfhearts. The Streltsy now have more melee attack and more charge bonus, but less melee defense. Well, the Brawlers, at least. The Regiment of Renown. Incarnate Elemental Beast we already talked about. Things in the Woods now they're more expensive. They have less HP per model, but they have more models now. So they have 24 Things in the Woods per unit instead of only 20. But their health is the exact same. But, you know, that is overall a net buff, I think. They can no longer brace, which is good. That was weird that they could brace in the first place. So they cannot brace for charges anymore. And they have a little more armor. Cool. Things in the Woods Ethereal. Okay, this is cool. So the Things in the Wood Ethereal are they're the summoned unit. So the spirits of Koldunja. So these are the summoned units, the summoned unit that you can only get from the Hag Witch of Beasts, which is pretty cool. So now they only get 12 entities, which is half of a regular unit. They also don't deal any base damage. They are pure AP damage because they are now a full-on ethereal unit. You are now genuinely summoning a minor elemental of the Lore of Beasts, which is really, really cool. I like that a lot. I think that's really nice. So your Hag Witch is summoning like actual spirits. that just happen to look like things in the wood, even though they have like the really cool, crazy effects on their bodies. They look very unique. Griffin Legion is a little more expensive, but now has Glorious Charge. We love to fucking see it. Winged Lancer, same thing. Boris got more leadership on all of his mounts, but when he's on a warhorse, he now has Glorious Charge and Causes Fear because he's got the little winged banner thing behind him that like shrieks when he's charging. Glorious Charge is so fucking good. I'm so excited for Glorious Charge. Boyars now have more melee attack and melee defense to make them better at prolonged combats. Very cool. Ice Witches now have more leadership. We already talked about the Glacial Blast stuff. All Kossars now have Woodsmen. Cool. So I will say it's very funny to me that Games Workshop kind of came in and was like, okay, you can't call them Ungals and you can't call them Gospodars. We kind of want to get rid of that for this particular time period. But like, if anything, I think Creative Assembly has done a very surprisingly good job of making it where it's now very painfully obvious which units are Ungals and which units are Gospodars because of like the various traits they have. So it's like, oh, all of my Kossars have Woodsmen, and like my Kislevite warriors are like more of a skirmish pattern. And it's like, oh, my Kossovite dervishes and stuff. And then you're like, oh, look, there's the Gospodars with their very, very heavy armor and very different appearance and stuff. I just find it funny. We're like, I feel like this patch actually makes it easier to tell what's kind of intended to be an Ungal unit versus a Gospodar unit, which I think is great. Games Workshop would probably be like, no, don't say that. But anyway. Oh, okay, regular Streltsy got affected as well. So regular Streltsy are now much more aggressive. So they have more melee attack, a little less melee defense, notably better charge bonus, and a better effective range for their pew-pew stuff. So that's great. So Streltsy got buffed. Elemental Bear is now an elemental, so it's no longer unbreakable. Little Grom now has a 50 bonus versus large. So it is a cannon that says, fuck you to big things. It also reloads in a quarter faster. So notably faster reload time, and it also gets a hefty bonus versus large. You'll love to see it. Dawes' Hearthblades now have much better visibility range. Wow, their max range was 40, so they couldn't see shit, is what you're telling me. Frozen Heart we already talked about. This is a really cool change. So the Snow Leopard is now recruitable from tier 2 of the Animal Den tree, which is so nice. So that means Mother Ostankia gets access to Snow Leopards at tier 2 in her like Animal Den tree. So Mother Ostankia now gets regular access to Snow Leopards, which makes a lot of sense. Like they're literally just wild cats. The Incarnate Elemental Beast is now tier 5 from the Forest Recruitment building. Okay, so the Incarnate Elemental Beast used to be a tier 4 unit. Now it's a tier 5 unit, which makes more sense. It feels like a tier 5 unit. And they fixed an issue with Hagwitch Heroes where they were spawning really garbage innate traits, legacy traits that are no longer used. So that's good. So they got rid of like the really shit traits. Lizardmen, so many good Lizardmen things. I really want to play a Lizardmen campaign, even though everyone's gonna want me to be playing the new stuff campaigns. CRK Guard now gains the 1% weapon strength per rank, just like all of his generic characters. Awesome, that's great. I did not realize he wasn't already doing that. Primal Instincts is now a faction-wide passive. Oh, baby. Oh, so Lizardmen got big boy buffed. So Primal Instincts, that's what I was thinking of earlier. So Primal Instincts is when you get below a certain health threshold, you like deal more damage. That's now faction wide. Oh, that's scary. Fix some sacrifice Sotek problems. Riperdactyl riders are not quite as good visually. Oh, pteranodons have Woodsmen now. Yay! That's really good. Okay, that's awesome. Because they had that in tabletop. They had Forest Strider in tabletop. Because the pteranodons, their whole thing is that they're like really fast and agile, and they know how to swoop through the trees and the jungles without issue. Whereas the Riperdactyls are more a little stupid, just like frenzied, like kind of creatures. So the fact that the pteranodons have Woodsmen now is very nice. That means your pteranodons are much less bad if they have to be fighting in a jungle for some reason. Let's see. And then they're adding the skink attribute to a bunch of things. Oh, Temple Guard have silver shields now? Oh, fudge. Or no, fuck. That is amazing. So not only do Temple Guard now have immune to psychology and cause fear when they're protecting a character, but they also have silver shields. Fuck yeah, dude. Oh my god, Temple Guard are juicy. Adding Crocscore, immune to flanking. Chameleon Stalkers are now cheaper. Nice. Blah, 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 blah. The solar engine ability on the solar engine Stegodon. Cool. All right, cool. Yep. Norska, the Chaos Frost Dragon. Yeah, so the Frost Worm is now a Kislevite unit, and the Chaos Frost Dragon is now the new unit type. To be fair, that is a much more appropriate name for it. I never liked the Frost Worm in the Norska roster, because when you would read the lore about Norska and Kislev, the Frost Worms were definitely not chaos creatures. They were like natural creature. They were like kind of your more classic dragonish type creatures that were often kind of more heavily associated with Kislev than Norska. Like the Norskans never used them. They were too busy like trying not to get killed by them. But I think this is very exciting. And it also makes the fact that they're literally just two-headed chaos dragons make a lot more sense. Because now they're just a native species of dragon to Kislev that has been mutated by chaos. Instead of being just a random thing. So yeah, that's good. Nurgle, fix Speed and Malice and Savage Bloodlust not applying to Pox Nurgles. Oh, good. Skaven, Clan Molder now correctly gets growth juice from exotic animals and fur resource buildings. Oh, very nice. Okay. Let's see. Fix some other bugs. Summoned Rat Ogres now have the Scurry Away and Frenzy passives. Very cool. That actually makes Summoned Rat Ogres a lot better. Slanesh, Timber now provides timber. Well, that's good. Demonettes of Slanesh actually got their damage buff that was talked about prior and is now fixed. Beguilers, Bringers of Beguilement no longer deal Rampage, they now deal Charmed, which is a different kind of debuff. Empire, fix some little bug things. Cool. Huntsman General skill now actually gives bonus versus larger Huntsman Archers. That is pretty important. Let's see. Pride and Service now applies to your Regiment of Renown. Cetra, with all of his glorious titles, now has the Glorious Charge attribute on the Chariot of the Gods, which is fucking beautiful. By the way, randomly, speaking of Cetra, I am going to be doing a Who Would Win stream, which is going to be super fun. Me and Andy are going to do the classic two angry nerds yelling at each other about why their character is stronger. About Cetra the Imperishable versus Malekith the Witch King. And by the time you see this video, it's going to be 2 hours. Pretty sure 2 hours after this video releases, maybe 3 hours after. It's just go to you're on my YouTube channel right now. If you go click on my channel and go to like live or whatever, you'll see like a stream for that, and you can click like the notify me button so you don't miss it. But it starts pretty quickly after this, like 2 or 3 hours later. Two princes are cheaper. And Usirian's Legion of the Netherworld is now a pretty standard ethereal unit. They no longer deal regular damage. They only deal armor-piercing damage, and they have frostbite. Neat. Let's see. Zinch. Fixed an issue where Changeling was cheating on a couple things. Cool. Fix a little bug thing. Echoed Hellbrass has a little less melee defense, but now he has Deadly Onslaught and Foe Seeker and Skirmish Battles. Cool. Blue Scribes are more... It says negative, but I assume that's a typo. They're more expensive now in multiplayer. The Changeling, huge price reduction in melee or in skirmish, which is good because like him by himself is not that special. It's what he transforms into. So he's now a 400 cost lord until you pick the form he transforms into, in which case you pay a lot more money. His base melee attack is significantly reduced, but his base melee defense is significantly improved. He also has less armor. Okay, so he's a little easier to kill with outside of melee, but in melee, he's very, very resistant to being slapped. Zongors, as we talked about earlier, have been rebalanced as actual gores. Cockatrices are cheaper, but also lost 1,000 health, so they're not quite as tanky. Mutilated Vortex Beast lost 2,000 health, lost 13 melee attack, gained 5 melee defense, lost 20 charge bonus, but gained 15% missile resistance, a 20 bonus versus infantry, and no more bonus versus large. So a pretty hefty debuff to the Mutilated Vortex Beast. Significantly less offensive, no longer great at monster duels, but it's more resistant to shooting, it's a little more durable in combat, and it's now much better against large squads of infantry, which makes sense. Like, the Mutalisk Vortex Beast should not be the anti-large monster. The anti-large monster should be the Slaughter Brute, which hopefully we'll get with the Khorne DLC when that happens in like a year. Yeah, the Khorne DLC, the Slaughter Brute should be the big bad anti-large monster. The Mutalisk Vortex Beast should 100% be anti-infantry. Also, I do agree that it was grossly overtuned. It really felt like, so I think these are really good changes. Because it felt very powerful. Like, way too powerful when it was on offense. So I think this is much more reasonable. And actually gives it like a clear role within the roster. And Ace in the Fallen now has the basic Aura of Mutation ability in addition to his other ones. Cool. Okay, so the Herald of Tzeentch now has Strider on his mounts. Cool. Flamers of Tzeentch have a little more leadership. All of your Doom... Okay, so everybody on a disc now has Strider. Nice. Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch. More leadership. Significantly higher calibration distance, which means that he's going to be much more... I want to say that means he's more accurate at longer range, if I recall what that means correctly. So I think calibration distance is like the bigger the number, the further they can shoot without the shot like wandering off target. Calibration area is now larger, significantly less damage, but projectile impacts now spawn flaming vortexes. Interesting. I don't know if that's going to be a great change or not, because that's very interesting, because the Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch, I think a lot of people were comfortable with the way it worked, where it was very, very good against like characters and other like fairly small but high in value entities, because you'd come up on them and just be like, and you didn't have a lot of ammo, but the attacks were devastating. So this is interesting because this means that it deals significantly less damage to a singular target, but instead now spawns vortexes that are going to wreak more havoc. So it's going to be significantly more powerful against like large groups of enemies, like large amounts of cavalry and infantry and all that other stuff. I'm curious if this is going to make people like them more or less, because I felt like the old Exalted Flamer, same thing for the Burning Chariot, which is the Exalted Flamer on a flying chariot. I felt like the old version people were happy with, because it was much better at focusing down individual targets, like very specific targets. Whereas now it seems like the thing I'm kind of struggling with, I guess, is like, I'm curious if the vortexes are going to be powerful enough where I would rather have an Exalted Flamer to deal with large groups of like infantry or whatever, as opposed to just bringing like Changebringers, where I can have like an entire squad of flamers that are able to shoot significantly more projectiles at large groups of enemies. I'm very, very curious how that's going to pan out. And then, of course, we already talked about Disc giving Strider now. Vampire Coast. The Vampire Fleet Admiral now has Charge Reflection, Charge Defense versus Large. That's very strange that he did not have it before. I honestly didn't know that. So good. Yeah, that's a good change. Count Noctilus on his Necrofex now has Encourage. That would make sense. That adds up. Fix some other little bug things. Vampire Counts. Fix a little bug thing. Vlad von Karstein's Lore of Vampires now reduces the cost for the spells he actually has. That makes sense. I still feel like Vlad and Isabella should not have Loremaster. They were not Loremaster characters. The only characters in the Vampire Count roster that had Loremaster were Heinrich Himmler and Manfred von Karstein. That was it. I still don't like that they kind of just unnecessarily buffed Vlad and Isabella's spells, but you know, whatever. What are you gonna do? Warriors of Chaos. Bellacor's faction effect now applies to all demons. Change Be'lakor, you sweet, beautiful bastards. Do it. I'm gonna make that video. I'm gonna remake that video every single year until they fix Be'lakor. Be'lakor should be the regular Demons of Chaos faction. He should not be in the Warriors of Chaos. He should be the Demons of Chaos faction. I'll say it until my head explodes. I fucking hate that he's in the Warriors of Chaos. He would be perfect for the Demons of Chaos, because even though he wouldn't have access to Chaos Lords and Chaos Sorcerer Lords, he would still be able to create his own Demon Princes because he has a unique mechanic built in for that. It's literally perfect. Just fucking do it. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Warriors of Chaos will now gain souls from racing Chaos Dwarf settlements. Cool. And just fighting Chaos Dwarfs. Chaos Lords of Khorne are cheaper sometimes, more expensive other times. Chaos Sorcerer of Tzeentch now has Strider on his disc. They fix some little skill bugs. Cool. Wood Elves. In a recent release, some Wood Elf faction leaders were changed in order to have a maximum variety of voice actors. Torgavon now has Daith as their faction leader again. Hooray! Daith's back. Malevolent Treemen now have their capture power fixed. They fixed some issue with some bugs. Unit abilities. Forward on a unit. Okay, so this ability is basically talking about all of the things that used to cause Rampage and how they have been fixed for the new Rampage system because Rampage is so much more devastating. So, for instance, we see that the Slaanesh army ability. So, if you're playing as Slaanesh, you get your three abilities you can activate once you've done enough damage or whatever the fuck Slaanesh's thing is. I forget. So now, what it used to be, you unlocked Fascination first, then you unlocked Narcissism, then you unlock Sweet Sorrow. Now it has been reversed. So now you get Sweet Sorrow first, then you get Narcissism. Wait. I lied. The other way around. So it used to be Sweet Sorrow, then Narcissism, then Fascination. Now it's Fascination, then Narcissism, then nope, I was right the first time. Leave me alone. Okay, I can read. Okay, so Fascination is now your tier 1 ability, and it does cause Rampage. So now it takes 5 seconds to cast. It deals 10 damage. So it deals twice as much damage. It takes 2 minutes to recharge instead of only 90 seconds, but it only lasts for about half as long. So this is your tier 3 ability, which because of how Rampage is so much more powerful, obviously this is a change they would need to do. So now you're able to slam an enemy unit with this, so it will force them to Rampage for 14 seconds, and then 2-minute cooldown, 3 minutes. It takes 5 seconds to wind up, and it deals. It's actually going to deal more damage than it used to because it deals twice as much damage, but it's not quite half the length that it used to be. So it will actually deal more damage, which is nice. Narcissism now lasts for longer, but it has a longer cooldown and it takes longer to cast. And then Sweet Sorrow has been changed pretty significantly. So Sweet Sorrow, which used to be that I think you activated it and it buffed everybody on your army to make them super duper fast. Now it's a single target nitrous oxide. So it lasts for 15 seconds. It only has a 60-second cooldown now, so a 1-minute cooldown. It takes 1 second to activate. Instead of affecting your entire army, you only affect a single unit. It only lasts for 15 seconds. However, it gives you significant fatigue regeneration, gives you a 40% speed bonus, and 40% charge speed. Holy fuck. That is super fast. Wow. Okay, so on the charge with Sweet Sorrow, your units are going to be fast. They're going to be Speedy Gonzalez. Oh my god. Yeah, that on Nakari is going to be hilarious. He's going to be freakishly fast. Character ability changes. Curse of Joff now lasts for only 13 seconds. Fermented Fungi is only got a 2-second reduction, so Fermented Fungi is still very powerful. Language of Du Bois, which I want to say is... I want to say that's Wurzag's ability. Now has a 55-meter range instead of 35. The Twisted Twin can get to a higher maximum for his spell costing. But, the requirement for reaching is unchanged. Okay, so the Twisted Twin, which is Village, is now able to get... Now, he just has he just gets a better buff by casting spells and being in melee. Celestial Sweep has adjustments to the timing, and it now deals magical and flaming damage in addition to what it already did. Cool. The Crown of Claws, which was Mother Ostenkia's item, now has a 55-meter range instead of only 35. Rage Embodied Rampage, which I want to say is Scarbrand's ability has a significantly shorter time. So now it's only 15 seconds, but it has a shorter cooldown. Same thing for Rage Incarnate. Seductive Glory, which also causes Rampage, shorter time. Wrathful Reaper, which causes Rampage, shorter time. Dragon's Fang now has Executioner on it, which I think only really affects skirmish battles. Glare of Insanity. Okay. Number of uses is only 1 now. This one comes with the story. The Glare of Insanity is used by the giant boss Hydra you use during the Beasts of Rama monster hunt. So this is a Norska specific thing. Originally, this ability cycled on and off during the battle, causing your entire army to occasionally rampage. But in the new implementation, it resulted in a truly demented battle where your entire army was permanently rampaged. It was not playable, so we have now fixed it. That's really funny. Just the hardest quest battle in the game. All right. Several abilities have had all of their times change. Armor of Darkness lasts longer. Ooh, I really like Ice Sheet. So Ice Sheet now reduces acceleration by 25% in addition to everything else. That's awesome. It also lasts longer. I really like Ice Sheet. I think it's a great spell. Hysterical Frenzy does not last as long, which is the Slanesh spell. Overcast now doubles the duration, but no longer increases damage. Cool. Pavan of Slanesh lasts longer, costs more to cast, and it no longer causes Rampage, but it does drain 2% fatigue per second for 17 seconds. That is a shitload of fatigue drain. Thorn's Aura doesn't last as long, applies buffs to allies instead of a debuff to enemy, and gives damage reflection. Ooh, sexy. Nice. I love damage reflection. That's great. Fires of Change now gives a little bit less of a ward save. Unit abilities. Fury of Cain, Rampage. Fury of Cain only lasts for 28 seconds now instead of a much longer 62, but gives a substantially higher weapon strength bonus. Primal Instincts, which is the Lizardmen faction-wide ability, now only gives 5 melee attack instead of 10. That's much more reasonable, especially because everybody fucking has it. Disdain of the Dragon Emperor now gives a +10 reload skill buff. Cool. This is from the Zengu War Drum. The Nangao Grenades. Ooh. Okay, so this is the active ability from the Regiment of Renowned Crowmen, which is the Moon Empress's eyes, or whatever they're called. So you can use it now twice per battle. It lasts for 10 seconds, deals substantially less damage, but has a lot more explosion damage and a larger explosion radius. This ability now, oh my god. So, okay, this used to be a regular drop bomb ability where you would fly your Crowmen over a unit, you'd activate the ability, and they drop a bomb, you're done. Now it's a carpet bomb that lasts for 10 seconds. So they're just dropping bombs over and over and over again for 10 seconds, and it deals a lot more explosion damage. So you can either just have them sit on top of a unit and drop 10 seconds worth of bombs to just fuck that unit, or you can fly them in a line and they'll drop bombs over 10 seconds as they're flying to deal damage to a lot of units. That is a very, very cool ability and kind of hilarious. Guardian Shield. I'm trying to remember who Guardian Shield is. Guardian Shield has a 55-meter radius. It now negates enemy magic weapons in the area. Whoa, that's super fucking powerful. I don't remember exactly who Guardian Shield is on, but removing magic weapons, that is a huge buff. That is a nasty AF buff. Because that basically means that if there's any form of physical resistance, it becomes a ward save. Because if there's no magic damage, then fuck you. You can't get through my physical resistance. So that is powerful. Petrifying Gaze. Oh, okay. So Petrifying Gaze is now a ability. Okay, so Petrifying Gaze is on the Cockatrice. It used to just be a debuff, where when the Cockatrice would fly into combat, it would just apply a debuff to everybody, and it was kind of boring. So now it's an ability, which is pretty cool. It's 1 use per game, lasts for 32 seconds. Has a 50 meter cast range. So it's a one-time use powerful petrification effect. It slows the enemy down every 8 seconds, escalating by 25%. Oh, Oh, okay, that's super cool. So, okay, so you use it on an enemy unit for the first 8 seconds, they are slowed by 25. And then for the next 8 seconds, they're slowed by 50%. For the next 8 seconds, they're slowed by 75%. And then the last 8 seconds, they cannot move at all. That can be devastating if you use that correctly. Man, that's a long time to be dealing with a growing speed debuff too. The Berserk Rampage, which is mostly on Norscan units, now has a longer stage 1 and a shorter stage 2. All right, I think that's reasonable. Let's see. Fixed an issue that stopped flying units from playing death animations if they killed by charged. Fix some other random bugs. Fix some... yeah, okay. So a lot of these are just little random things that I don't really care about. Damsel weapons, splat with blood, cool on the whooshing compass, the teeth of a small skull, and the articulating art was skinned to the wrong bone. Okay, fix that. Adjusted 9 environments of Cathay farms to make shadows less extreme. Fixed an issue with Azhag missing a weapon when he was mounted. Azhag got all the fixes. Updated skinning on lower LODs of the Bloodwrack Medusa and War Hydras to fix distortion problems. The Dragon Crown of Karaz quest battle now uses correct stuff. Fixed animation problems from the Spirit of Tepak Quaddle. Fix some VOs from characters. Fix flyby VOs. The Drippin' Fangs faction in Mortal Empires now uses the correct actor in diplomacy. Fix a Norscan character not having a name. Fix some issues with just little bugs. Fix an issue where legendary heroes referred to the wrong character type. Fix an issue when recruiting exalted heroes and their marked versions. All right. So pretty substantial. That was, oh god, we've been talking for like an hour and a half. I am very excited for a lot of things in here. It's interesting. I think myself and a lot of people were kind of expecting this to be just Shadows of Change Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, and for there to be substantial like additions to Kislev, Cathay, and Tzeentch. Which this obviously is not what they did. Like they added the new stuff and make sure all the new stuff worked. But they did not like, you know, I think a lot of us were like, oh, maybe they'll like rework the Cathay caravan system to make it more exciting. Or maybe they'll make the Changeling campaign actually have a lose condition and be a little harder. Or maybe they'll, maybe they'll make the Kislevite Ice Court be a little more thematic depending on what faction you play. Or maybe they'll make like the Kislevite supporter system a little more dynamic. Obviously, none of those things happened. Now, what's good is this clearly shows that the patch does not have to be about a faction in order for them to receive a substantial update. Because the Lizardmen got a big fucking update. Like the Lizardmen got a huge update. They got the Spawnkin rule. They got predatory instincts or primal instincts to every single unit in the roster, and they got predatory fighter, whatever it is, on all of the like Saurus units and Cruxigors and stuff. And then they got like the update on the Temple Guard, and they got the update on the solar engine. Like the Lizardmen received a ton of updates, despite the fact that they're not at all associated with the main focus of this patch update. And the Rampage system, I think the Rampage update is overall going to be very, very strong. I'm very curious how people will feel once they get to play with it, whether they'll like it more or less than the old system. To me, it seems a lot better than the old system because it makes it where Rampage is just flat out a bad thing to have now. Because, you know, your units are going to be like wandering in place and shit. But that means it's an ability you really want to use offensively instead of worrying about, you know, your own guys having it per se. It also makes feral units much more risky to take because it's far more likely they're not going to do what you want them to do. But, you know, it's nice to see that, you know, we don't have to deal with like Cold One Knights doing that shit anymore. I will say I also really, really enjoy like some other, you know, I really like a lot of the new abilities they've added to the game, where you have things like the Glorious Charge passive. That's fucking awesome. The Silence passive is also really, really awesome. I'm very curious who all is going to get Silence. Silence seems like it's going to be an incredibly powerful ability, but I'm very curious who all is going to benefit from it. Overall, though, I'm really happy to see Construct being applied globally instead of only to the Tomb Kings. I'm all same thing. I really like the new elemental passive. I'm glad that they fixed the Onyx Crowmen so they're actual elementals instead of just not being what we were told they are. Because like the game treated them like they were just literal flesh and blood crow people. So the fact that they're yin aligned, they count as elementals, so they no longer break and run from combat. They have magical attacks and physical. Makes so much more sense, and it's just a massive improvement in my opinion. For themes and all that other stuff. But please do let me know what y'all think of all of this stuff down below. I'm very excited to read all of your thoughts. And by the time you're watching this video, I will almost assuredly be either about to or already streaming the new content here on YouTube. So I'm very excited to see you guys and to check out all the new content and everything. I'm really amped to show everything off. I love your faces very much. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves, and I will see you on the battlefields before you know it. Thanks for watching.